They were sent into the storm with 2 bedrolls, 1 dull knife, and a cigar box full of seeds. Mara Rowan was 21, her sister Nell was 19, and the town of Kestrel Notch had decided that was old enough to die politely, not after a trial, not after a vote anyone wanted recorded. Just one gray morning in February when the snow was stacked to the windowsills and their uncle came to the cabin door with his hat in his hands, his jaw locked tight, and the whole street pretending not to watch. 3 knocks. Heavy, final, the kind a man uses when he has already chosen the version of himself he is willing to live with. Mara knew the fist before she opened the door. Eben Rowan stood on the porch with ice in his beard and 2 canvas packs at his boots. Behind him, through the blowing white, she could see faces in windows. Mrs. Pike behind a curtain. Abram Dace in the blacksmith doorway. 2 councilmen standing under the store awning as if they had wandered there by accident. They had not wandered there by accident. "The pass is closing," Eben said. He did not look at Mara's eyes. "The stores won't carry everybody through March. The council says every household has to be counted clean." Mara looked past him at the street. "Counted clean," she repeated. Her voice did not rise. That made it worse for him. Eben swallowed. "You know what I mean?" "I know what they mean," Mara said. "They mean the 2 women who told them the flour tally was wrong are suddenly the 2 mouths they can spare." Inside the cabin, Nell had stopped moving. Mara could feel her sister's silence behind her. Nell was not like Mara. Mara met danger like a door she intended to open. Nell went still first. She listened. She measured. Then when she moved, it was already too late to stop her. Eben finally glanced at Mara's face, then looked away again. "There are potatoes in 1 pack," he said. "A little dried venison, flint, a tin cup, your mother's seed box." That reached Mara. Not the venison, not the bedrolls, the seed box. Their mother had kept it under the bed in an old cigar tin with a brass latch, every packet labeled in her cramped, patient writing. Barley, turnip, mountain cress, red beans, fever root. Things that should have been planted in thawed ground under an honest sky. Not carried up a mountain by 2 girls no one wanted to owe. Mara said, "You packed this last night." Eben's face tightened. She did not ask if he had slept. She did not ask if he had eaten breakfast across from them while knowing what would happen after. Some questions are not asked because the answer has already done enough damage. Nell came to the door wearing her coat, her dark hair braided tight, her boots already laced. "How far?" she asked. Eben flinched at the calmness in it. "North Ridge," he said, "past the boundary cairn." Nell looked at the snow. "That is not banishment," she said. "That is weather doing your murder." The whole street seemed to hold its breath. Eben closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he opened them and said nothing. That was how Mara knew the town had already won the part of him that mattered. Not all cruelty announces itself as hatred. Sometimes it arrives with supplies. Mara picked up the heavier pack. Nell took the seed box and slipped it under her coat against her ribs, where the cold could not reach it first. They did not say goodbye. They stepped off the porch, crossed the frozen road, and passed every window that had ever borrowed their mother's remedies, their father's tools, Mara's arithmetic, Nell's steady hands. No one opened a door. No one said stop. By the time they reached the last cabin, the wind had erased half their footprints. By noon, it had erased the rest. The storm found them before the tree line. It did not fall, it attacked sideways. Snow came hard out of the northwest, fine as ash and sharp as sand. The ridge trail vanished in pieces. First the wagon ruts disappeared, then the ditch line, then the dark shapes of the fence posts that marked the old logging road out of town. Mara led for the first hour because she knew the map. Nell led after that because she knew ground. That was the bargain between them, though neither had ever spoken it. Mara could hold a whole set of numbers in her head until they became a shape. Nell could look at a slope, a drift, a broken limb, and know which part of the mountain intended to lie. By the second hour, they were no longer walking a trail, they were walking decisions. Nell would stop, tilt her head, and choose a line between 2 pines. Mara would follow in the boot marks and count silently under her breath. 100 steps, rest, 100 steps, check fingers, 100 steps. Turn face from the wind before it burned the eyes raw. Their mother's survey map was folded inside Mara's bodice, wrapped in oilcloth. It was not a town map. It had been drawn 14 years earlier by a railroad geologist, Orson Bell, who came looking for coal seams and left irritated notes about useless heat under worthless stone. Worthless. Mara had read that note at 16 and never forgotten it. Warm vapor through basalt crack. No commercial value. Possible vent line above Cold Larch Ravine. No commercial value. Men who came hunting for one kind of wealth were often blind to another. She had kept that line in her mind for 5 years, not because she expected exile, but because Mara collected useful facts the way other people collected mercy, quietly, without trusting anyone to notice until they needed them. Nell dropped to one knee beside a drift and dug 2 fingers into the snow crust. Wind shifted, she said. I know, not enough, Nell pointed with her chin. If we stay high, it cuts straight across the second ridge. We lose light before we find shelter. Mara pulled the map out. Her fingers were so cold the paper crackled like dry leaves. Cold Larch should be beyond that saddle. If Bell marked the vent correctly, the ravine mouth is east of it. If he marked it wrong, then we learn how much faith weighs in a storm. Nell looked at her. That was almost pretty. I am freezing. My standards are lower. For half a second, Nell smiled. Then the wind took even that. They climbed until the trees thinned and the world became white stone, black trunks and breath. Mara lost feeling in 2 toes. Nell's left cheek was cut where an ice-loaded branch snapped back and struck her. Blood froze before it ran. They kept moving. Around the 4th hour, the fear changed. At first it had been sharp and obvious, a thing with teeth. Then it became quieter, more dangerous. It moved under the ribs and started making reasonable suggestions. Sit for 1 minute. Close your eyes. The snow is softer under the furs. You have already gone farther than they expected. Mara recognized that kind of thought and hated it. She said, Tell me about the horse. Nell did not turn. What horse? Papa's mare, the one you convinced would enjoy apple mash. Nell huffed once, almost a laugh. I did not convince her. I offered evidence and she accepted. She destroyed half the wash shed. She was enthusiastic. Papa was furious. Papa was impressed. He used your full name. He used everyone's full name when he was impressed. Mara's lungs hurt when she laughed. It was still worth it. They talked for 10 minutes after that, not because there was anything useful in remembering a drunken horse in a broken shed, but because memory was a rope. If they could keep hold of one end, maybe the mountain would not take the other. Then Nell stopped. The stop was so sudden Mara nearly walked into her. What? Nell raised a hand. Mara listened. At first only wind, then underneath it, faint and strange, a sound like breathing through stone. Nell moved left toward a line of larches bent under the weight of snow. The trees grew in a shallow curve around a boulder field, and the snow there was wrong, not gone, not melted clean, but thinner. The surface sagged in a crescent as if the ground beneath had exhaled. Mara dropped beside it and thrust her bare hand into the crust. The snow was cold. The stone below was not. Nell looked at her. Mara whispered, The vent line. They found the ravine mouth 10 minutes later. It was not grand. Nothing about survival looks grand when you first stumble onto it. A narrow split between 2 basalt walls. Half choked with ice, easy to miss if the mountain was not already trying to breathe through it. They turned sideways and forced themselves through packs scraping rock. For several seconds there was only darkness, pressure, and Nell's breathing ahead of her. Then the stone opened. Cold Larch Ravine was not a ravine so much as a wound the mountain had decided to keep warm. Its walls rose black and slick on both sides. Snow had fallen into it, but not held. Patches of brown earth showed under the white. Fern stems, dead everywhere else, still stood in curled green fists near the northern wall. A thin vapor lifted from cracks in the stone and vanished before it reached the open air. Mara went down on both knees. She pressed both palms to the ground. The earth was warm enough to feel like an answer. Nell stood very still. Mara, I know. No, look. At the back of the ravine, behind a curtain of dead vine and ice, there was an opening. Low, black, half hidden. Not a hole, a tunnel. Nell pushed the vine aside with her boot. Warm air breathed over their faces. For the first time since morning, Mara let herself believe something dangerous. Not that they were safe. Safe was too large a word. But the mountain had given them a margin, and sometimes a margin is the difference between a grave and a beginning. They did not sleep that night. They worked. Nell found dry punkwood under an overhang where the vent heat had kept the rot from freezing solid. Mara struck flint until sparks finally caught. The first flame was the size of a bean, then a finger, then a trembling orange tongue. They watched the smoke. If it pooled, they would die slower. If it pulled inward, the cave had another breath somewhere deeper. The smoke curled once, hesitated, and drifted toward the back of the tunnel. Mara said, "Ventilation." Nell said, "Don't sound pleased yet." "I am not pleased. I am alive enough to be interested." By firelight, the cave revealed itself in pieces, a front chamber tall enough to stand in, a dry shelf along the east wall, a deeper pocket where the air was warmer still, cracks in the basalt floor where heat seeped upward, a roof fissure far back, narrow as a knife cut, where gray daylight would fall if the sky ever cleared. They laid the bedrolls on the warm shelf and dragged stones into a crescent to hold the fire. Nell went out twice for fallen branches. Mara opened the packs and made inventory. 2 bedrolls, 1 wool shawl, a knife, flint, tin cup, 3 days of venison if they were honest with hunger, 4 potatoes, a fist of salt, a coil of mending twine, their mother's cigar box of seeds. Mara opened the brass latch. Inside, each paper packet had survived. Barley, turnip cress, fever root, beans. A twist of dried moss spores from one of her mother's experiments. Nell crouched beside her, her hair crusted with frost, face cut, eyes bright with exhaustion. "What can grow in a cave?" she asked. Mara looked toward the warm cracks in the stone. "What is stubborn?" Nell nodded once. That was enough ceremony for the first night. The first week was not a story about hope. It was a story about order. Hope, Mara decided, was too expensive until the work had paid a little interest. They needed heat, water, food, and a way to keep the cave from becoming a damp grave. Nell found water first, not a stream, but a steady bead of melt seeping down the rear wall where the warm rock met the frozen world above. She set the tin cup beneath it, waited, emptied it into a shallow stone bowl, and set it back again. "Slow," she said. "Slow is not nothing. Nothing would have been quicker." Mara marked the wall with charcoal. Day 1, Day 2, Day 3. By Day 4, Nell had built a better fire pit. Flat stones at the base, taller stones behind to catch and throw heat, a small vent gap so smoke kept pulling into the deeper throat of the cave. Mara started the first growing bed in the warmest pocket of soil, a 6-foot strip along the north wall where fern roots still held the ground together. The soil was terrible, heavy, sour, packed under its own cold memory. She broke it with the knife handle and a sharpened branch until her palms split. Nell took the branch from her. "You are bleeding. It is a small amount of blood. It is your blood. That gives it a certain importance. You are sentimental. I am efficient. Infections waste time." She wrapped Mara's palm with a strip torn from her petticoat and tied it too tightly. Mara did not complain because Nell had left no room in the knot for argument. They crushed charcoal into the soil, mixed in leaf rot from the ravine floor, scraped mineral dust from the warm wall, and folded it through the bed by hand. Mara rationed each movement like food. Barley first. Not because it was the easiest, because if barley grew it would prove the cave could carry a grain. Turnip at the cooler edge, cress near the seep, moss spores along the warm black stone. The beans they held back. Beans were a promise for a future they had not earned yet. For 16 days nothing came up. 16 days is a long time when every morning asks the same question and gives back bare soil. Their venison ran out on Day 5. The potatoes became seed by force of will and were not eaten. Nell learned snares from 3 paragraphs in their mother's notebook that assumed a reader had more experience than they did. The first snare caught nothing. The second sprang on wind. The third disappeared entirely, which Nell blamed on a fox with professional manners and no shame. On Day 9 she came back carrying a snow rabbit. She held it by the hind legs, face pale, mouth set. "I felt bad," she said. "Then I remembered I am hungry." That is a clean sequence. It lasted less than a minute. Still clean, they used everything. Meat for broth, bones twice. Hide scraped and stretched near the fire because Nell said there was no sense letting the animal do only one job when it could do 3 at night. The wind crossed the ravine mouth and made a sound like a saw through frozen wood. The cave held warm but never soft. Warmth was not comfort. Warmth was labor they did not have to spend dying. On Day 12, Nell said, "Do you think Eben believes we made it this far?" Mara stared into the fire. "I think he believes whatever lets him sleep. Do you hate him?" Mara thought about the packs at the door, the way he had not looked at her, the fact that he had included the seed box. "Yes," she said. Then after a moment, "No." Nell waited. "I hate what he chose. I do not yet know what that leaves. That sounds heavier." "It is." The fire snapped. Nell said, "I keep wanting one clean feeling." Mara laughed once without humor. There are no clean feelings in a cave. On day 17 the cress came up. Not the barley, not the turnip, cress. 3 thin green hooks pushing from the wet soil near the seep, pale as candle flame. Ridiculous and alive. Nell saw them first. She did not call out. She came to where Mara was scraping soot from a potstone, took her by the sleeve, and pulled her to the bed. Mara knelt. For a long time neither sister spoke. The seedlings were barely larger than stitches. They were also proof. Mara reached toward them, stopped herself, and drew her hand back. Nell whispered, "We are not dying this week." Mara closed her eyes. No prayer had ever sounded truer. After that, the cave became less a shelter and more a machine they were building while it was already running. Every part mattered. The reflector began as the inside of the cigar tin lid, polished with ash until it caught the pale daylight from the ravine mouth and threw it toward the growing bed. Later, Nell found a strip of mica in the basalt seam, thin enough to split, bright enough to bounce light. She fastened it with twine and a forked stick. "Crooked," Mara said. "Useful," Nell said. "Crooked and useful. Then it belongs here." The barley appeared on day 23, 1 blade, then 6, then a weak row leaning desperately toward borrowed light. Mara measured them with marks on the wall and wrote everything in the notebook. Air warmth near the floor, soil conditions, seep rate, smoke pull, germination time, failure of 2 turnip rows, successive cress, moss holding in 3 patches. She wrote because writing turned terror into data. Nell worked because motion turned terror into walls, snares, shelves, and a door made of woven brush that slowed the worst of the night wind. By the 5th week they had a routine that belonged to no town and no clock. Wake when the ravine light changed, tend fire, empty seep bowl, check seedlings, shift reflectors, reset snares, scrape soil, repair shelter, count food, sleep near heat, wake to feed the fire again. It was not happiness. Happiness would have been insulting that early. But there was satisfaction. The hard, narrow satisfaction of using everything you are for something that matters and finding, to your own surprise, that everything you are is not small. By the 7th week the beans went into the rear chamber. That chamber had seemed useless at first. Stone floor, little soil, a roof cracked too narrow to matter. Then the weather cleared for one afternoon, and a blade of sunlight fell through the fissure and landed on the stone like a command. Nell stood in it and looked up. "Mara, I see it." No, calculate it, Mara did. If the sun rose higher as winter weakened, the light would travel across that rear floor for maybe an hour a day. Not enough for a field, enough for a box. They did not have a box, so Nell built one from split branches, moss packing, and flat stones. Mara filled it with every good handful of soil they had created since the 1st week. Leaf rot, ash, mineral grit, rabbit bone char, warm cave dirt. Their whole winter broken down and mixed into something dark enough to smell alive. They planted 6 beans. Nell sat back on her heels. "That is everything we have." Mara looked at the little mounds. "No," she said. "That is everything we can risk." Nell looked at her sideways. "There is a difference?" There had better be. There was. By day 52 the first bean split ground. By day 60 the cress could be cut and come back. The barley was tall enough to brush with fingertips. The turnips had finally decided to forgive the soil. The moss spread in a slow green stain along the warm wall, exactly as their mother's notes had said it would. Persistent under poor conditions, medicinal value uncertain, further observation required. Mara read the sentence aloud. Nell said, "Mother had a cruel way of making uncertainty sound useful. She made everything sound useful. She would have loved this place." Mara looked around the cave. She would have hated the drainage. Nell laughed. It was the first full laugh either of them had made since the porch. It changed the cave, not forever, not magically. But for a moment the walls seemed to hold something besides heat. The first human sound came on day 68. Nell was outside checking the snare line when she heard it above the ravine. Boots, not fox, not deer. A person trying to move quietly and failing because hunger makes the body clumsy. She slipped back through the brush door, one hand already reaching for the knife. "Someone above," she said. Mara closed the notebook. One, moving along the rim. Doesn't know the mouth. Mara looked at the seed beds, the fire, the boxes, the wall of green moss, the life they had built in secret under the town that had thrown them away. Then she stood. "We see him before he sees this." Nell did not argue. They came out together. Above them a man froze at the ravine rim. He was perhaps 25, lean from winter, wrapped in a trapper's coat patched at the elbows. A rifle hung across his back, but both hands were raised and open before either sister asked. Smart man, Mara thought. He stared down at them like he had found ghosts doing chores. You're alive, he said. Nell said, often. Mara said, who are you? Jonah Pike. He swallowed. My mother keeps the West Laundry. I run traps past the old larch stand. Mara knew the name. Pike's Laundry had sent smoke over the town every Monday. His mother had watched from behind a curtain when they left. Nell's expression did not change. Jonah looked ashamed before either sister gave him permission. I heard what happened, he said. Not at first. Eben said you had kin beyond the ridge. Then the storm went 3 days and people stopped saying that. I came looking when I could. Why? He did not answer quickly. That helped. Finally he said, because nobody else did. The truth of it stood in the cold between them. Small, insufficient, still better than most. Mara studied him until he shifted his weight. Then she said, come down slowly. He entered the cave like a man entering a church built by people he had wronged. He stopped just inside. The warmth touched him first, then the fire, then the green. His mouth opened and closed once. Nell set the tin cup near the coals. Sit, drink before you say something foolish. He sat. He drank cress broth with both hands around the cup. His eyes kept moving back to the growing beds. You grew this, Mara said. No, the mountain felt sorry for us and planted it while we slept. Nell coughed into her hand. Jonah looked at Mara, uncertain. Then he realized it was a joke and smiled for half a second before the weight of the cave took him again. The town is bad, he said. Mara's face emptied. Bad how, he told them. The stores were worse than the council had admitted. 3 elders dead from cold. 2 children sick with fever. Flour cut with acorn meal. Men walking farther each day for game and coming back with less. Families boiling leather until even shame had no flavor left. Even Rowan was distributing what little medicine remained. At the name, Nell turned toward the fire. Mara did not. When Jonah finished, the cave was quiet except for the seep dripping into the bowl. Mara looked at the barley. It was not enough, not for a town, not yet. But enough was not always where mercy started. How often do you run this line? She asked. Every 8 or 9 days. Bring sacks next time. Jonah looked at her. Nell looked too, but she already understood. Mara said, we can cut cress and barley greens. Turnips soon. Moss, if the fever is what I think it is, you will take it to the sick households first. Jonah's voice came out rough. You would feed them? Mara thought of the windows, the street, the silence. Then she looked at the seedlings. I am not feeding their courage, she said. I am feeding their children. Jonah came back in 6 days, not 8. He brought 2 empty sacks, a pouch of salt, and a packet of sewing needles wrapped in cloth. He set them near the fire without making a speech. Nell noticed. Mara noticed, noticing. No one mentioned it. The first cutting was small, cress bundled in damp cloth, barley greens tied with twine, 3 turnips no wider than 2 fingers. Moss scraped from the warm wall and wrapped in oil paper with Mara's dosage instructions. Jonah read the label. People will ask where this came from. Lie badly, Nell said. He blinked. Mara said, bad lies have short lives. We only need this one to live long enough for the sick to eat. So Jonah lied badly. He said a trapper had stores. He said he found a winter cache. He said nothing at all when the questions grew sharper. For 3 weeks the food moved quietly. The Pike boy up the ridge, the sick child in the Faro cabin, old Mrs. Voss with frost in her lungs. The Dace twins who had stopped crying from hunger and frightened their mother more by becoming quiet. Mara and Nell cut and replanted, shifted reflectors, expanded the rear chamber, learned which moss returned fastest when scraped shallow and which patch had to be left alone. The beans climbed their makeshift stakes and opened pale flowers under a slit of winter sun. On day 91 the town found out, not because Jonah betrayed them, because relief leaves tracks. The Faro boy's fever broke after 3 days of moss compound and cress broth. Mrs. Voss sat up. The Dace twins cried again, which their mother took as a miracle, because hunger had not left them energy for noise. The town healer, Adelaide Kern, demanded to know who had written the dosage instructions. Jonah tried to say no one. Adelaide Kern had delivered half the town and buried the other half's secrets. She could tell when a young man was lying out of kindness and not skill. Bring me to the hand that wrote this, she said. Jonah came up the ridge with the healer 2 days later. Adelaide was 60, sharp-eyed, wrapped in black wool, and too tired to waste breath on apology. She entered the cave, saw the moss wall, and said only, "Well, Mara liked her for that." For an hour, the two women spoke in names of plants and fevers, heat and steeping time, children and old lungs. Adelaide asked good questions. Mara answered them. Nell corrected a preparation method once. Adelaide accepted it without pride. When the healer left, she carried medicine, seed starts, and the truth. By nightfall, Kestrel Notch knew. The reaction did not arrive cleanly. Gratitude never travels alone when it has to pass through guilt. Some families wept. Some sent small things up with Jonah. A whetstone, thread, a sack of oats, 2 candles saved too long. Mrs. Pike sent a note that said in crooked letters, "I saw you leave and I did not open my door. My son opened his. I am trying to learn from him." Nell read that twice and folded it carefully. Other people went quiet. The councilman stayed inside. Abram Day stood at his forge and beat the same piece of iron until it snapped. Eben Rowan walked from house to house with medicine from the nieces he had sent into the storm, and no one who saw his face afterward could decide if he looked punished or simply awake. Mara wrote none of that in the notebook. The notebook was for things that could be measured: growth height, soil warmth, moss yield, bean development, seep rate. Guilt was not a unit she trusted herself to record. On day 104, Eben came himself. Nell saw him first from the ravine floor. He stood at the rim with snow to his knees and a canvas pack on his back. He looked smaller than he had on the porch. Not physically. He was still a broad man, still thick through the shoulders, but something in him had been lowered. He climbed down badly, slipping twice, scraping one hand on stone. Neither sister offered help. When he reached the bottom, he stood 6 feet away from them. For the first time in 3 months, he looked directly at Mara's face. "There are 4 sick in the lower houses," he said. "Adelaide says the fever will turn tonight. She needs more compound." Mara waited. Eben's mouth tightened. "I am not asking for me." "No," Nell said. "You would not know how." The words struck hard because Nell did not throw many. Eben took them. Mara turned toward the cave. "Come in." He stared at her. She could see he had prepared for anger, for refusal, for a debt he could understand because it hurt in a familiar shape. He had not prepared for work. "Come in," Mara said again. "You can carry more than Jonah." Inside, Eben stopped like everyone stopped, but with him watching it was almost unbearable. The cave did not accuse him. It simply existed. The fire pit, the bed shelf, the wall of tools, the moss, the barley, the beans in the rear chamber under their blade of light, the brush door, the seep bowl. The evidence of 104 days in which 2 girls he had helped discard had not only lived, but built a system strong enough to answer the town's hunger. He looked at the bedrolls longest. Those had come from his hands. Mara let him look. Then she opened the notebook. "Names," she said, "ages, symptoms. How long since onset?" Eben sat across the fire and gave the report like a man holding himself together with facts. 4 patients, 2 children, 1 elderly man, 1 pregnant woman whose fever made Adelaide most afraid. Willow bark gone, fever root low, food still thin. Mara calculated supply against need. Nell was already scraping moss. "The compound covers 3 days," Mara said. "If the fever breaks by then, good. If it doesn't, Adelaide will need cooling cloths and constant water. The pregnant woman gets half-strength first, then repeated small doses." "Not full," Eben nodded. "Say it back." He looked at her. Mara's voice hardened. "Say it back." He did. "Not perfectly," she corrected him. He said it again. Only then did she begin packing. Moss compound separately wrapped, cress, barley, greens, 6 turnips, the first handful of beans, too young to save but not too young to eat. A page of instructions torn from the back of the notebook because the front pages had become too valuable to risk. Nell worked beside her in silence. Eben finally said, "I knew what I was doing that morning." Mara stopped tying a bundle. The cave seemed to draw a breath. He kept his eyes on the fire. "I have tried to find a way to say I did not, that the council pressed me, that I thought you had a chance, that I thought the packs made it something else." His voice bent but did not break. "Those would be lies. I packed the bags the night before. I knew the storm was coming. I did it anyway." Nell's hands went still. Mara looked at him for a long time. "Why are you telling me?" "Because saying sorry is too small," Eben said, "and I do not want to insult you with a small thing dressed as a large one." Mara thought of the first ridge, the second set worse than the first, Nell's cheek bleeding, the 17 days of bare soil, the first cress seedling, the bedrolls he had packed lying 10 feet away. She said, "You are right, it is too small." Eben nodded once. She picked up the bundle and tied the knot. But the fever is not waiting for enough. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, she handed him the pack. Carry this carefully. I will. No. Carefully means if you fall, you land under it. For the first time, something almost human moved through his face. I understand. He left with Jonah before dusk. The 4 fevers broke within 3 days. That news came back with Jonah, along with something wrapped in faded blue cloth. He set it near the fire. Eben sent this. Nell reached first. Inside was a field journal. Mara knew it before Nell handed it over. Their mother's. Not the seed notebook they had carried. Another one. The lost one. The one Mara had searched for after the funeral and finally believed had been burned or sold or thrown into some corner where grief put things it could not bear to sort. The cover was soft from years of use, stained with earth at the bottom edge. Mara opened it. Drawings first. Root systems, soil layers, wild cress under spring runoff. The black ridge above Kestrel Notch sketched from 3 angles. Nell asleep at 8 years old with one hand tucked beneath her cheek. Mara at 10 reading in a chair, brows drawn exactly the way Nell teased her for still drawing them now. Then, near the last pages, a map of Cold Larch Ravine. The vent line marked in their mother's pencil, the rear chamber, the warm wall. A note beside it. If the town ever turns on what it cannot understand, the girls must look north. Mara read it once, then again. Nell sat beside her, shoulder touching shoulder. Neither spoke for a long time. Their mother had not saved them from the exile. She had done something harder and more terrible to think about. She had prepared them for the possibility of it. Mara pressed her hand flat to the page. Nell whispered she knew. Mara said she hoped she was wrong. The fire cracked softly. Outside, the mountain went on being stone. Inside, something in Mara that had been held tight since the porch loosened by one painful thread. Not forgiveness, not peace, recognition. Love could be a seed box. Love could be a map hidden among papers. Love could be a woman dead 7 years and still pointing her daughters toward warmth. Spring did not arrive like mercy. It arrived like a negotiation, a thaw then a freeze, a blue day then a white one, water under snows, ice over mud, birdsong one morning and a storm that same night to punish anyone foolish enough to believe too early. But the cave no longer depended on belief. It had systems now. The moss wall produced steadily. The barley bed reseeded faster in warmed soil. The beans gave enough to save seed and still send food down. The turnips thickened at the cooler edge where the heat weakened and the roots preferred the argument. Mara and Nell taught from the cave first. They made the town come to the work, not the council, not men sent to inspect, working people. Thomas Dace came with his blacksmith hands and said little, but noticed everything. Liddy Pike came because her son had told her to stop apologizing with notes and learn something useful. 2 younger farmers came from the lower cabins and stood stunned at the cave mouth until Nell handed one a shovel and said, "Wonder later, they learned soil amendment, vent reading, reflector angles, which moss to harvest and which to leave. How to tell warm ground from wet ground by smell and by the way snow settled over it. How to build a cold frame over a south-facing ledge below town, using glass scraps, pine pitch, and patience." Mara taught the way her mother had taught her. No softness where accuracy mattered. No cruelty where ignorance was honest. If someone guessed, she made them test. If someone repeated counsel wisdom, she made them put a hand in the soil and explain what the soil was actually doing. If someone apologized too long, Nell found them a heavier bucket. By April, the first town cold frame was built on Miller's Ledge. By May, seedlings stood in rows where snow had lain 6 weeks earlier. And by June, the council stopped using the word impossible where Mara could hear it. The first time Mara walked back into Kestrel Notch, the street was muddy with melt and bright with thin spring sun. She had imagined that walk in anger, then in dread, then not at all because imagining used energy better spent on living. Now it happened without drama. Nell walked beside her, Jonah a few paces behind, carrying seed trays. The town did not gather in a crowd. It opened in small, awkward human pieces. Mrs. Pike stepped from her laundry doorway and said, "You look well." Nell said, "We look alive. Well is a different season." Mrs. Pike nodded as if that were fair. The Pharaoh boy, the one whose fever had broken on day 3, watched from a fence rail with a face still too thin and eyes too curious. Liddy Pike waved him over and put a seed tray in his hands before he could stare too long. Adelaide Kern came out of the healer's house. "I want the fever root preparation written again," she said. "Your dosage hand is difficult when damp." Mara almost smiled. "Then keep it dry. I am old, not obedient. We will rewrite it." That was how welcome sounded in practical mouths. Eben stood at the far end of the street. He did not come forward. Mara understood that, and because she understood it, she walked to him. The town quieted in the way people quiet when they are about to witness something they think belongs to them. It did not. Mara stopped in front of her uncle. He looked older than February. The kind of older that does not come from time, but from finally seeing what time had allowed you to become. "The journal reached you," he said. "It did. It was hers. I should have given it to you years ago." Yes, he took that because there was nothing else to do with it. "Thomas says Miller's ledge will hold the frame. It will if they keep the drainage open. He says they will." Thomas says many things with confidence. That surprised a sound out of Eben. Not quite a laugh. Too rough for that. But close enough that both of them noticed it and neither knew where to put it. He looked at the street behind her, then back. "I do not know how to make it right." Mara heard the old version of herself answer first. The version from the porch. The version that wanted a clean sentence sharp enough to cut both of them free. There was no such sentence, so she used the one the winter had taught her. "You cannot make it right," she said. "You can make the next thing less wrong." Eben's face changed, not relief. Relief would have been too easy, but he had been given a task instead of a verdict, and he knew what to do with tasks. Mara turned away before the town could mistake the moment for an ending. It was not an ending. The work was waiting. Years later, people would argue about when the Kestrel cold frame method truly began. Some said it began on Miller's Ledge in April, when the first official beds went in and the town admitted, though never all at once, that the Rowan sisters understood a mountain better than the men who had claimed authority over it. Others said it began in the cave with the cress on day 17. Nell always said it began with the seed box on the porch. Mara never answered the question the same way twice. On hard days, she said it began when their mother made the map. On generous days, she said it began when Jonah climbed down the ravine with his hands open. On honest days, she said it began with a wrong thing no one could undo. The cave remained the center, not a shrine. Mara disliked shrines. They encouraged people to look at what had happened instead of what still needed doing. It remained a working place, warm wall, moss bed, barley strip, bean box under the Fisher light. Tools hung in order because Nell had opinions about tools, and most of them were correct. The first bedrolls stayed folded on a high shelf, not for sentiment, Mara said, but because emergency supplies should never be discarded. Nell let her say that. The town changed slowly, because towns are made of people, and people rarely change at the speed of the lesson. The council lost power not in one dramatic collapse, but in 100 practical humiliations. People stopped asking Elder Rusk whether something could be done and started asking Mara how to test it. They stopped waiting for permission to plant under glass. They carried soil to ledges, built reflectors, traded seed, wrote down outcomes, argued about drainage, and fed one another with less ceremony than before. Adelaide and Mara spent 4 years compiling the medicinal notes. Their mother's work, Adelaide's 30 years of practice, Nell's observations from the cave, the dosages learned in the fever winter. Copies traveled down valley in packs and apron pockets. Fever root, moss compound, cress broth, cooling methods, warnings written in heavy ink where guessing might kill someone. Jonah Pike built a cabin near the west trapline and never moved far from the ravine. He married late, or not at all, depending on which gossip version survived the telling. What is certain is that he came to the cave in every season and always brought something useful. Salt, glass, a hinge, a story, silence when silence was better. Eben Rowan lived 9 more years. He did not become a new man in the way people prefer for stories. He became a man who knew exactly what he had done and carried that knowledge without asking anyone to admire the carrying. He repaired roofs before storms, hauled stone for the cold frames, took the longest watch when sickness moved through town, spoke less, listened more. Once in the 3rd year, Nell handed him tea by the cave fire and he accepted it with both hands. That was all. It was not nothing. When he died, Mara went to the burial. Nell stood beside her. Neither spoke. There were no words that would not have made the truth smaller. As the decades passed, the method outgrew their names. That pleased Mara more than praise. Families in valleys she never visited built warm beds against stone shelves and repeated amendment ratios without knowing which woman first wrote them by firelight in a cave. Children ate winter greens and did not care who had discovered that moss harvested shallow returns faster. Farmers watched snow settle thin over warm ground and knew to test beneath it because someone had taught someone who had taught someone else. That was continuity. Not a statue, not a song. A thing still working after the hand that made it was gone. Nell died first in early winter, sitting near the warm wall with a cup of tea cooling beside her and the moss green at her shoulder. Mara lived 11 months longer. She died in the small room in town she used when storms made the cave path dangerous, with the mountain visible through the window and her mother's journal on the table. The whole valley came, not only to mourn, to count themselves against what had been given. Adelaide was gone by then. Jonah too, even long in the ground. But Thomas Dace's granddaughter read from the teaching notes in a clear voice. The Pharaoh boy, grown gray, stood with his own grandchildren. Liddy Pike's family brought the old cigar box polished at the latch from so many hands opening it over so many years. Inside were new packets: barley, turnip, cress, beans, moss. The old labels had been copied until the handwriting no longer belonged to one woman, or even one family. That would have satisfied Mara. There is a lie people like to tell about hard winters. They say the suffering was worth it because of what came after. Mara never believed that. The porch was still the porch, the storm was still the storm, the first ridge was still hard and the second still worse. The 17 days of bare soil were not made gentle because green came later. What came later mattered. It mattered enough to feed children, change a town, and send knowledge through valleys that would have otherwise gone hungry. But the cost remained the cost. Mara carried both truths because both were true. Being right did not save her from being cast out. Being useful did not make the casting out just. Building something did not erase the winter that forced her to build it. But what she built kept growing. The mountain had been warm and secret, so had they.